Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hi. So I think we just have to reply to each other from here. But
Hi, Wafa.
hi. Okay. So Rachel, you wanted to learn Angular? Is that why we are doing this
Yes,
session
I did.
today?
Yes, so it's purely
Okay.
for me.
Yeah. No, of course it's gonna be live, and there's gonna be people tuning in, and they're gonna like, so if you're here to watch, like, if you're here to learn with us about what Angular is, you're in the right place. And also, like, we're starting with this series called Learn with Women Tech Makers. So we're first gonna introduce ourselves. We just said our names, but we want to give like a formal introduction to the not so informal series. But yeah, so Rachel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm with Google Developer Groups Doha. I'm organizer. I'm also a Women Techmaker ambassador for Doha. Apart from that, I'm a researcher and a PhD student, and I work with visualizations. So I'm hoping this would help me, learn Angular just for, becoming better at coding with coding visualization apps and so on. So, how about
Perfect.
you, Wafa?
So yeah, my name, as you said already, I'm Wafa. I'm based in Qatar as well, and I'm a software engineer here. But that's not how I came to Qatar as. Like, I was a fresh graduate when I moved to Qatar from India, and I taught myself a lot of things along the line, like in addition to Angular, I guess. So like, there were a lot of things I picked up, but naturally I find myself as the convincing way to describe me would be like a front end engineer, I suppose, because I really like doing front end development. And a quick fun fact is I was introduced to HTML when I was in grade six. So I don't know, I really love web, and especially designing for the web, like improving the user experience is what I really care about. So I think just now you guys are able to see us, right? Yeah, yeah. Earlier it was the screen. Okay, great. So hey, this is us. Yeah. Any questions? Please shoot them in the chat, and let us know. It's gonna be like a code along session, and if you have any questions, you can also reach out to us. We're on Twitter, and we're gonna share our Twitter handles in some time. All right. So, Rachel, do you want to give like a quick backstory of how we came up with Learn with Women Tech Makers Doha?
Yes. So, the thing that Wafa and I wanted to do was bring in a new series where we could have people learn with us. There's so much amazing technology out there, and we thought this would be a fun way for all of us to get together and learn. And in this case, I'll be the one that's learning. I'm going to be the student today. I don't know anything about Angular, so we thought Angular would be a wonderful first episode to start off with. And Waf was quite the expert, so we thought it would be fun to have both of us on YouTube trying to, teach and learn from each other.
Yeah. So as we said, this is a series, and we wanted to like kind of just share it with the world, like how how we can learn Angular or any other topic that's going to be interesting and coming up. So today we're just going to start with like introduction and getting started, like with Angular, like how you can install Angular, and then we'll move into more like build a component, build your very first component, and then if we have time, we'll communicate with the backend service.
Mhm.
So the whole backstory is that Rachel wanted some help getting started with Angular, and she regardless of the backgrounds was like curious, and she had like a use case in mind. So the use case that she came up with to me was to build a books dashboard, because she's working on a project and she wants to build like a web interface for it, like a web application on it. So we're going to be using Google web books API, and Angular is going to be the framework of choice for the front end.
That's
and
right.
yeah, and also like just anyone on the web, if they want to know like how you can get started with Angular, I think this is the right place. And if you want to like if you have more time and you want to like delve deep into certain topics, we can also do that. Like we'll be sharing links throughout, like at least documentation. So yeah, that's about it. But Rachel, did you have any particular reason why you like wanted to learn Angular in particular? I just described the use case, but I wanted you to share a bit about why you wanted to learn Angular in particular.
Right. So one of the main reasons that I found out was where I code with JavaScript. So the code really tends to get really long and confusing. So I just wanted a way to sort of compartmentalize everything so I can, I know which component or which where I should look for certain things in my code, because that gets me really confused most of the time. So I thought Angular would be able to help me in that. And also I
That's
think for
true.
speed, yeah,
Mm.
those were my reasons. Yeah.
Speed as in like performance application
Yes,
performance.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
like I said, I work with visualization, so speed is something that is very important. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's one of the goals as well. So we want to do this entire series as episodes, so it's not like very you don't get dizzy watching it one huge video. We're just gonna split it, and like I went through the agenda, we're just gonna our entire goal is to just understand Angular and help you get started with it and build a first component. We're gonna see more about services, RxJS, and also like we'll bring in some visualizations since we said it's a book dashboard. Like we'll be working with D3 and a lot more of NGRX, like so we'll be moving to some we'll be instead of just like state management, we'll be moving to like store and things like this. I don't want to throw in a lot of terminology, but I want to keep it like this is like the goal. We're gonna have a dashboard, and maybe like a month from now, just 2 episodes from now, you'll be able to relate much better to what I'm trying to say. So let's start. We're just gonna like this is how the format is gonna be. We're gonna like treat it as questions and answers, and Rachel's gonna be like asking questions, and we're gonna try to like I'm gonna try to answer her to the best of what I know. And if we don't, we're just gonna like open Google and try to learn together. So it's just like an environment where we're learning with each other. And I think first I should start with a question for that. So, Rachel, what's your experience with the web?
Um, I'm I'm comfortable. I would say I'm intermediate. I've done a bit of HTML. I know a little bit of CSS. I mostly work with JavaScript, so that's as far as I go.
Nice. Okay.
Mhm.
So, all right. So how like maybe I'm just gonna like fit in a persona here. So anyone who's a beginner, and like even if you don't know the basics of web, this episode can be like a review for you to like kind of go through the basics of web. So maybe we can start with that. So Rachel said that you already told that you're like already experienced with web, right? So
Yes,
I have like a few slides that I would like to
great.
share. Like
Yeah,
it's like a presentation, but it's from a very old talk that I did. But I think this fits right into the context, like where we can see what are the fundamentals of the web. And if you
sure.
have more questions, we're just not going to treat it as a presentation. We're just going to go through few slides and then keep switching. So it's just going to be like, us interacting with each other. It's still a conversation. Please cut me if you don't understand anything. Like,
Sure,
if you want me to go over something in a more better way.
sure.
All right. So, I mean, we're going to build a book dashboard. So, of course, we need to know how the web works, right? Like, I mean, why we just randomly said that it's going to be like a web dashboard. But
Mhm.
of course, like there's so much behind web. There's from the moment that a client types in a URL on his browser, it could be Chrome, any internet browser. It goes in as a HTTP request, and it goes to the server, and the
Mhm.
server gets a response. So the response that you get is usually like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which Rachel's already familiar with. And this response, again, it comes back to the browser, and it gets loaded like all at once. So HTML, CSS, and then JavaScript, and we're gonna now like touch upon what each of them does, and we're gonna like see towards the end how Angular is coming into play. But these
Mhm.
are like the this is what happens. This is how the web works. So you type in a URL, and then it goes through as a HTTP request, and then the server sends a response, which is usually like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and the browsers just render it. So
Right.
uh, in terms of like what you see on the browser, let's just go ahead and do that example, right? Do you have a website that you want to load, Rachel?
Mm,
What's your favorite
um,
website?
just Google, I guess. Plain old Google.
No. Oh, okay.
Uh,
Maybe we can load our community page, right? What do we
yes.
call it?
Mhm. We do have
GDG.
multiple elements on that.
Yeah. So we just said gdg.community.dev, and this entire page loaded up. So what did we do? On our end, we just see the URL and we see the
Hmm.
response. But behind the
Right.
scenes, a lot of things happen, right? Which we just learned. So this entire page that just loaded, did you know that you can right click and say inspect if you're using Chrome, and you see like a lot of things, a bunch of things that this entire document stands for. This entire document that you see is like composed of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So by right clicking and doing inspect, you can see first like the elements in the elements tab. You see like the raw HTML. HTML is like hypertext markup language, and it has a lot of elements, right? So there's like div, there's header, which is like the header that once I highlight on it, you can see the blue, it being blued, like it being highlighted in blue in the browser itself. So you can see this is the home page header. These are like all HTML tags. And
Right.
if you want to see like more of the CSS, like of what each HTML tag is standing for. So if we look at the header, you just have to click on it, and on the right side there's styles. So the styles that loads up, this is CSS that has gone in place to kind of load this. So the
Right.
header has, if you collapse on the header, there's like more, we don't want to go in deep, but it's just like all you need to know is like this is the HTML, and there's some styling which
Hmm.
is taking care of like this rendering that's happening. And if you look
Right.
at the source tab, there's also like JavaScript. JavaScript is what brings everything to life. So we're gonna see all of that. So, but how is it so far? Are you like excited, or do you have any questions?
Not me so far. And if we do have comments, I'll put them down so everyone can be on page with what's being asked.
Yeah, sure.
Hmm.
So, once we right clicked and we saw
Yeah.
this entire HTML thing,
Hmm.
which started, these are called as document object models. Like this entire page is referred as documents, a document, and this entire the elements that just loaded, it's also called as a DOM. A DOM is nothing but HTML DOM, tree of objects. So DOM is like document object model. Like I think I repeated myself a lot. So
So it's just a hierarchy of the elements on the page.
yeah.
Right. Okay. Hmm.
So if you want to style like a particular thing, you're just gonna use like a CSS selector, select it, and then style it.
Right.
So that
And when
was
you say
the
style it,
top.
you mean I can change the color or increase the font size, change the background, anything,
Yeah, we
right?
can do all that. Yeah, we can do all
Yes.
that. So what's JavaScript? I think it has, this slide has some animations, so I'll just present it. So JavaScript is like, we saw that there's some HTML is something like, the DOM, which is the content and the structure. Whereas CSS is like the presentation. It makes it look more nicer. If you
Right.
just type in HTML and save it as a text editor in a text file, and just open it, it
Mm-hmm.
renders something like a very basic, just you'll just see text.
Mm-hmm.
Once you add style, it becomes like presentable. There's
Right.
colors and there's like a lot of things that you see on the web. And once you add JavaScript is what makes like the entire page, to come to life. So and the way you add JavaScript is using like the script tag, and we're going to see like, a lot about JavaScript, how you can make like the websites more behavior driven. So
Mm-hmm.
but before that, like, how do we want our books dashboard to be? If you want to just share a bit about it.
Right. So there are a couple of things that I want the Books API to sort of give a return. So some of the details that I would like to see would be like the title of the book, maybe if, like a small preview of the cover of the book and the
Mm-hmm.
price of the book. So these are three things that I think would be nice to, just to know more details about the book itself.
Mm, okay, that's nice. So of course here like the user is typing something and then
Mhm.
he's seeing a list of books, right? Like we want the book
Right.
dashboard to be like have this feature of search basically. So,
Right.
in
Yeah.
addition to all the visualizations and everything that we want to build, we're going to treat
Yes.
you as a client as well, Rachel. You're learning with us, and you'll also be like, we're going to treat you as the stakeholder. So, you're going to
All
give
right.
us requirements, and we're going to, just build them, inshallah. So, yeah. So, we just said search, right? Like, Rachel wants, you want a search bar, and the user's going to type
Yes.
in something and
Yes.
it's going to load something. So this whole interaction requires some UI event, right? We have
Absolutely.
HTML, CSS, that's the page that loaded. But
Mm-hmm.
in order for the page to respond, to have like a behavior,
Mm-hmm.
what we'll need is like JavaScript, right?
Right.
So you can have this search bar, you click on enter search, or you click on the search button, and it changes like something of the page.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Earlier you just saw a search bar, now you're going to see more. So it's updating the state of the app. So for that,
Mm-hmm.
like JavaScript is going to be useful as well, and we're going to see how we'll do it with Angular and all that, but these are like the basics that we'd want to know. So this is more like for us to understand what are the different ways that you can use JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a framework and there's like library, but we don't even know that, like, I mean, at least I oftentimes get confused between what's a framework, what's a library, and we're learning Angular, so we don't know where Angular falls. And there's like
Right.
React and Vue, and there's a funny meme, Rich, which says like every 1 month, or every night basically there's a new framework that comes up. So it's it's
That
it's
is
already at that state. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so it's like a lot of JavaScript frameworks these days are being built, but there's a lot of libraries too. But what's the difference, to be like to be like precise? Framework is something that you write your code in. It's like an ecosystem, whereas library is something you
Okay.
just import. So
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
if you wanna ask, like, what's Angular in that case? Angular is the framework, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like an ecosystem. You write your code inside this whole setup. Angular has its own routing mechanism. Routing is just like changing pages. It has its own UI
Mm-hmm.
library. It has a lot of, it's a framework. It's like a platform basically. Whereas React is like a library, for instance, if I just have to give you an example. So a framework,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Angular does not have to stop with Angular itself. If you want to use something external like another library or something, you can do that too. So a framework contains libraries. You can also like install libraries inside framework, inside Angular. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to see these things shortly. Um,
Okay.
so we saw how the web works. Did you have any other questions that are coming to your mind? Like, this framework library. Are there any jargons that you'd like to be aware of before you want to start?
No, I don't think so. No.
Mm. But oftentimes we do come across something like, a few people say websites, web apps, right? But they keep changing. Like, you don't know, we said books dashboard. Is books dashboard a website or a web app? Like, if we want to just, ask like each other about it. What do you think is a
Um,
books dashboard?
I think it would be a web app.
Wow, nice. That is the right answer. But how can you explain to us like why did you call it a web app?
Mm, interesting. Just more of an, I don't know. I think I just answered more intuitively. Um, I don't know what really makes the difference between a website and a web app.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
No, maybe you can nudge me on.
Yeah, sure. So I skipped a few slides and I think this was the next slide. But anyways, so this this difference is it's actually a bit confusing. They get used like very interchangeably and you get lost very often. So I was confused too, unless like, I had that moment where I had to ask that question and I just Googled it and the answer was right there. So you are right that we're going to be building a web app,
Mm-hmm.
and the books dashboard is a web app, and with Angular you can make both websites and web applications, by the way. But what makes it a website and not a web app is that
Mm-hmm.
website is more like static. It won't have a search, it won't have it won't deal with a lot of interactions. Like, it's just going to be informational, and
Right.
it's
So
just
the
going
more
to tell
interactive,
and tell.
so the
Yeah.
only sort of distinction between them is how interactive they are.
Uh, no, with a web application, yeah, in a way, yeah, that's right. In a way, that's right. Websites are more static. Web applications are dynamic. Yeah, if you can, if you want to add like human qualities to it, you can call a website being an introvert. They just keep to themselves. They're not like, very what do you call, talkative. They're not very
Interactive.
expressive. Yeah, like they don't like interaction, or maybe and the web applications are very like extrovert. They are interactive. There's like a search bar, as you can see here, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like a dashboard. Like, you were very right. So we should be at the end of this learn Angular session with Women Techmakers. We should be able to build a web dashboard, which is of course a web app.
Right.
So all right. So we did go through like what HTML is, what JavaScript is, and what the role of JavaScript is, and we can. I think we're now ready to just like finally move to what Angular is. Like, at least
Mm-hmm.
try to understand what are the benefits before we start using Angular. Though, Rachel, you already highlighted the scalability part of it. You wanted your app to be very scalable, and the code to be not very overwhelming and very organized. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Mm-hmm.
And Angular can do more, by the way. So you can do like data binding, you can create one page apps, you can have like a flexible development environment. It's also cross platform.
Mm-hmm.
And the MVC pattern, model view control.
Yeah.
it's very simplified version of that. If you know
Okay.
MVC and if you've built like apps using that, you
Mm-hmm.
can very well, like, build an Angular app. Like, Angular is like easier to get started with. And it's very
Okay.
simple and expressive, and of course, like, the speed and performance comes with it. Like, it's a part of that. You can optimize. And the best thing is, like, the user base is really huge. Like, if you're stuck at something, you're like a Google search away for your answers.
Mm.
Like, Stack Overflow, or even like the community is really good.
Okay, good.
So we're more relaxed that we're choosing Angular, right?
Absolutely. I mean, especially as a beginner, you need to have all these resources available and you need to have a good community support.
True. Yeah. Like, if I'm, learning any new framework, that's the first thing I'll look for. Because you don't want to be lost. Like, you want to like, know where you're going,
True.
at least whenever you're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, if I have to just explain Angular in one slide, it'll
Yes.
be this. Angular's built with TypeScript.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're now like going into what Angular consists of. Um, and RxJS. Angular is built with both TypeScript and RxJS. What's TypeScript? TypeScript. You know why these frameworks are really popular and why they help you like feel more relaxed in terms of like the performance, scalability, maintaining code, and all that. JavaScript
Mm-hmm.
is really messy, right? Like, the minute you program a web page which is like more than 2 3 interactions,
Mm-hmm.
it gets really scary. Like, there's like so many things to handle. You don't know what the state of the app is, where what the user just did. There's like so many document dot select, document dot this, that. It gets lost. And also, like, the asynchronicity of JavaScript, you don't know which function you're in, like where the code is, what the app is doing right now, which data like the app holds. That's ideally the state of the app. And I mean, um, that's like JavaScript, right? Also,
Mm-hmm.
also one more thing about JavaScript is that, do you know how to declare variables in JavaScript?
Yeah, we would just use where we are, or with the newer versions, we have let and const.
Yeah, right. So
Mm-hmm.
with the ECMAScript 5 and 6, we're using let and const, and var is just like short for variable. So
Yeah.
yeah. So, but the let const, can you suggest a variable name, which is like, I don't know,
Um,
a variable name, maybe books, or since we're gonna build a search, how about query string? Like,
okay.
or
Mm-hmm.
maybe search text, whatever.
Yes.
So if
Mm-hmm.
search text is a variable,
Mm-hmm.
of course it's a string. We're going to be passing something string, right? But if you
Right.
just define it let, or
Mm-hmm.
const,
Mm-hmm.
or even var for that matter, depending on which version of JavaScript you're using, when
Yep.
your dashboard is live, what's going to happen is that, it's going to figure out on its own. The code, the browser has to figure out which
Mm-hmm.
variable, the type of the search text is going to be
Yeah.
figured out on the go.
Right.
uh, so it's like it's dynamically typed. That's what they mean by, the type of the variable gets dynamically figured out. Whereas,
Right. Okay.
there's like so many issues that you can avoid by
Mm-hmm.
just static typing it. Static typing is in your code, you say that search text is a string,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
that's where
Okay.
TypeScript comes.
Okay.
that's
Mm-hmm.
that's that's the entire goal of TypeScript. Like, with TypeScript you get optional static typing, and you
Mm-hmm.
get maintainability
Mm-hmm.
and object oriented design. Like, you can have these classes, modules, and all these. With JavaScript too you can do it, but with TypeScript it's more natural because of,
The way
you
it's
know
just programmed.
yeah, yeah. And did you know TypeScript is by Microsoft? Yeah.
I see.
So if you want to put, like, the tagline of TypeScript, even on the website, if you just see it, it's JavaScript that scales.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's no wonder that you can, Angular is kind of made with TypeScript.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the huge distinction between, if I'm not sure, like anything is development over a period of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So JavaScript, um, like when JavaScript came in, there was like a lot of things that got introduced. ECMAScript 5, ECMAScript, like the LetVar, like we just discussed. The same way, Angular, like it's a framework. There was a version 1, version 2, version 3. Now we're like using the version 10, 11 of Angular. Like we're very far. But when we started, when Angular was first introduced, Angular didn't use TypeScript, and
Right.
Angular 1, as we call it, it's now
Mm-hmm.
like renamed to Angular JS.
Mm-hmm.
And after like version 2, which, like, from version 1 to version 2, the only difference is that Angular started using TypeScript, and a lot of
Okay.
things changed, and they could no
Mm-hmm.
longer support like the older apps. So
Mm-hmm.
that was like, I think in 20, like before 5 years or something. So it was a huge leap when Angular adopted TypeScript, and they could no longer support like the earlier version of the app. So,
Right.
but it was a huge step they took, but it was really good. It's for the good.
Mm-hmm.
Since Angular 2, Angular is like really easy to get started, very maintainable. I mean, it does have a learning curve, but it's fine. It makes it like easy to maintain the apps once you have it. So Angular is baked with like TypeScript. TypeScript is
Mm-hmm.
one, all of the components, all of the code of Angular, in fact, is also like written with TypeScript.
I see.
So another thing to know about Angular is reactive programming.
Mm-hmm.
These two concepts, and we're going to go through like about the architecture of Angular in more details. So what do you think is reactive programming? Have you heard of this?
I guess so. I think like I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong. So if suppose I want some sort of element to be updated, I would
Mm-hmm.
want I would want that data to be what do you call like updated in real time, as opposed to having to reload the page again and again to see some new information or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's more like an event driven approach,
Yes.
basically.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So yeah, reactive programming is event driven programming. It's more like, if I have to talk a little more in detail about what reactive programming it's like a driven programming paradigm. You're right.
mm-hmm.
But if you want to talk a little about JavaScript before and after kind of phase. So with JavaScript you have promises, right? Like, have you heard of promises?
Promises that a particular data is being returned.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whenever like JavaScript is making like a HTTP request or any request, it gets returned to it as a promise. So
Right.
for example, if it's communicating with the API is just like, I don't know, you can imagine it to be in our books dashboard, it's the books API, right? So
Right.
whenever JavaScript, if you're just using plain JavaScript, it's
Mm-hmm,
going to return a promise to you. And
mm-hmm,
as long as you search, and once you hit search with the text, the books
mm-hmm.
API will just return a response as a promise, and that's it. It ends. Over there the
Okay. Mm-hmm,
communication is done. Once the promise is returned with JavaScript, it's done. But
mm-hmm,
these days it's not like that, right? Like, there's more to it. uh, what if the user search replaces the search string with author, and maybe like a book got released, or like you don't want to stop the search, but you want to
mm-hmm.
like continue listening, continue getting like the new books, or and unfortunately the book example is not ideal to explain it. But if you think of it as uh, just like event, basically just typing, just
Mm-hmm.
the search text, you're typing, right? Every type
Mhm,
keyword like you're just typing a search, say D3 getting started. D3 is one word, and it hits the back end and as a service. And like if it's like promise, it's just gonna be one response. If you want to
Right.
listen continuously, it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be like a stream of data, right? So
Mm-hmm.
books API is like, unfortunately, not a good example. Maybe Twitter. If you want to keep listening to data, the response
Mm-hmm.
of a particular API call, you want to keep that
Okay.
channel open,
Right.
and that's when you need something like observables.
Mm-hmm.
So the search example I just told, was it clear? Like, could you understand it? Like, were you able to link it to the books example?
Uh, yes, in a sense. So just to make it clear, so when you say observables, it's going to be observing for any changes in the data, so it can give it back to us as a promise.
Yeah,
Does
you
that
can you can basically set the observable to be anything. It can be to listen to changes, or it can
right?
also be, in the case of the search string, like we said. Imagine
Mm-hmm.
this entire search to be like a API, somewhere someone is like writing and you're listening to it. It doesn't really hold to the context of the books dashboard. But you as a developer want to know what the users are searching for on the go, on
Right.
your books dashboard once it's published. So at that
Mm-hmm.
time, what do you do? That when you want to listen to that, you want to
Mm-hmm.
get like a lot of users who are using your books dashboard search
Mm-hmm.
string. So you won't just
Right.
make one request and you'll request to stop, right? Like, it can't be
Mm-hmm.
with a
Mm-hmm.
promise and then it ends. You want to keep listening to what they're searching for.
True.
So
Mm-hmm.
the books dashboard search, it's going to be like observable. So you keep listening to what the users all over the world are typing using your books dashboard.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That's like, you're right. If you want to like read more about it, it's more based on like the publish subscribe pattern, publisher subscriber pattern.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So a promise is just like, you asked for something, and one response was returned, to just summarize. Whereas observable is like a stream. If you think of it like a pipe of events,
Right.
it's like, there's one response at one time, another response at one time, another. It's like a continuous open loop. There's
Okay.
actually a very nice diagram, marble diagram. So who can just so uh, an observable is ideally this particular thing, this entire marble. Or you can
Mm-hmm.
just look at, the first line. We're not going to look into concat map. It's just like an operator on the observable. We'll go into more details with RxJS when we are dealing with state management, which will be
Mm-hmm.
episode 3, I guess. But to in the context of this episode, like, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's more about observables, us understanding it as, okay, one user searched for search string with red marble,
Mm-hmm.
and that was returned. And the same user modified it to be green marble, and then it's like different marbles.
Right.
You're still listening. You didn't stop. You
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
decide when you stop. You say
Right.
end, and then it ends. So that's
Okay.
that's a observable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And with reactive programming, there's this library called RxJS, reactive JavaScript. You can
Mm-hmm.
perform operations like these. Imagine you have like 2 3 observables,
Mm-hmm.
and how would you map it? How would you merge it? How would
Right.
you multiply it? How would you flip it? How would
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
so these are like the different operators that you can do. This is a good example. So if you can see, this is like the initial observable, and you want to do something on it with the other observable. What would you do?
Mm-hmm.
You'll use an operator called merge map. So there are like so many, the possibilities are endless with observables. So it's like a more extensive way of communicating, making your apps more powerful, basically, with the data, and like the way you handle these asynchronicity using reactive programming, RxJS.
Right.
How you'll
Mm-hmm.
make your data event driven, as with along with the UI, and so many other things. It's just like front end development is not a piece of cake these days. It's like it's very data driven, and it it has its own concepts and these things these days. It's really fun. Like when I used to code back in I think 5 6 years from now, when there
Mm-hmm.
was no state management, it was just
Mm-hmm.
like document dot document dot. It was very event driven. I used to think in terms of UI. Now with
Right.
all the data and the store management, specifically like the store management in place, you think of even the search text and the clicking on the search and the response and everything in a very data driven way. It's just like, okay, this is that click and that click. It gets very interesting and easier to maintain. This has been my experience so far. Yeah. So
Right.
that's a little bit about reactive programming. Do you have any questions, insights to share?
None so far. No.
Okay.
Maybe I'll get more
So
questions as we go on.
yeah, sure, no worries. Just feel free to any questions from the chat? No, right? I think yeah, I don't see any comments. Okay.
No, not for now.
So we said like in order to understand JavaScript, Angular, we need to know what's TypeScript,
Mm-hmm.
what's reactive programming, and now we can just look at the
Mm-hmm.
architecture in a very high level, and we're gonna move to like how we get started, and then we'll go through some like some we'll keep switching basically
Okay.
between slides and code. Uh, so, like, now we know what Angular is made of. First, we saw what were the benefits. To just give you a quick recap, how are you feeling? Whether is it overwhelming already, or is it it's fine? How's your
It's
excitement level?
fine. I'm really excited to start actually looking at the code. But I think
Okay.
this, of course, makes all the difference because you need to know everything before you actually start.
Okay, great. Yeah, true. That's right. We're going to look into these things in action very soon. So, just to
Okay.
recap, we saw like the benefits, why Angular, and then we also saw what Angular is made of.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to see the architecture of Angular, how Angular was built, like
Right.
what are the components of it. So,
Mm-hmm.
when we, just start a ng new app, we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
know what we're gonna go through the boilerplate code in detail. What is this? What's that? What's this? Like any questions in your mind, you should please feel free to shoot. We can go through them in detail.
Sure.
So this is roughly the architecture of Angular. I know a
Mm-hmm.
lot of colorful things, but if you just look at one thing at a time, if you want to break it down into like the MVC, the
Mm-hmm.
model view control.
Yep.
uh, but let me first start by describing what a view is. View is like what you see, right?
Yeah.
It's basically called as template, and what you mostly
Okay.
see is like the HTML part of it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So this entire thing is view, you can call it.
Mm-hmm.
And model is like the data part, right? The data that you get, the business logic as you'd call it, you can call
Yes.
it a service. The green boxes that you see, this can
Right.
be like the service which deals with the actual data, the
Mm-hmm.
asynchronous call you made, which got returned as an observable, like all of those parts, like the business logic, like all of the data that your app talks to with the external backend service, it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
like a service.
All
And the
right.
third thing, the now like we saw the MV, and what's
Yes.
the C, the control part. um,
Yes.
what happens when this data gets loaded to the view, or
Mm-hmm.
what happens when the view when the user clicks on this particular thing in the view. All of the
Mm-hmm.
control logic goes inside like the components. You can roughly say that, call it as this way, but it's up to you. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like a Lego block. You can build your own application. uh, but the Lego block actually, like if you want to think in terms of Angular, the Lego block is a module.
Right.
A module is something composed of a component, service, and it can also have external modules. You define the block, right? It can be
Mm-hmm.
two red blocks and one big blue block as one Lego block. You define the
Right.
block. So
Okay. Mm-hmm.
it could be just a component service by itself, or it could be anything else. So these are like the blocks, module blocks that you can extend your application on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this is basically it. Like, any event, the base on the book's dashboard, once the user clicks on search, the button search being clicked and it being reflected in the component is event binding. And
Right.
property binding is like, this search component basically is having a search text, right? Search text is a
Mm-hmm.
property
Mm-hmm.
of the search component, and that
Right.
is being binded to the template. Like, whatever
Mm-hmm.
search text has is what you see on the template.
Right.
This
Okay.
concept
Mm-hmm.
is called data binding. Like, we're going to go through these in detail, but this is like the rough architecture of Angular. And
Okay.
you can, this entire data that gets injected into the component
Mm-hmm.
can be using injectors. It's
Okay.
just like the name as it stands for. If you're
Mm-hmm.
familiar with object oriented paradigms, you can
Mm-hmm.
think of all of these to be classes, and the injection being like the injection happening using the
Mm-hmm.
dependency injection method.
Okay.
And all of the properties of like object oriented programming can apply, like, inheritance, all of these things.
I
So we're
see.
gonna now like, move a little bit into what a component is, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to like, stretch it. Like, I want to keep the enthusiasm flowing. So I'm gonna now like switch to code editor,
Great.
where we'll see how you can get started with Angular.
Okay.
I think we earlier said that you need to have npm installed, node
Mm-hmm.
package manager. uh,
Yes.
we did say that, right? So Node,
Yes, I.
Node is just like, it's an open source cross platform. It's basically a runtime environment, and it helps you have like all these capabilities if you wanna. But we're not this we're just using Node to build Angular. This
Mm-hmm.
workshop is not about it. Node is just like, you can think of it as a tool, which allows you to have like all of these facilities basically. You can build an API using Node. You can build like, it gives you like a server side proxy. It gives a lot of things. This is a
Right.
good example. This picture here is a good example. So if you
Mm-hmm.
see with Node, you get modules. We're going to use npm, which is called Node Package Manager,
Yeah.
in order to download Angular.
Mm-hmm.
So if you install Node, I believe Node and VS Code are installed on your system already. Are they installed, Rachel?
Yes, yes, I do have them installed.
Yeah. So we're going to use Node Package Manager. If you install Node, you'd already have npm. If you just do npm -v,
Mm-hmm.
are you able to see my screen?
Yes,
Like
yes, I
code
can.
screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Should I zoom in or it's fine?
Yeah, I think Zoom is better. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I have like the sixth version, 6.41 of npm. Do you get like a version number when once you do npm -v?
Yes.
Okay. So this helps us install this package manager, helps us install Angular.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, with Python you need pip, with Angular you need this npm in order to just get started with Angular. So
Right.
if you we still didn't touch the Angular documentation part, but if you just go angular.io/docs, this is
Mm-hmm.
like everything. This is our friend basically. It has everything we need. So we already saw what Angular is. We're gonna go more in detail whenever we wanna. We'll take like a dictionary approach instead of learning everything at once. We're just gonna learn concepts as they pop along. So
Yes.
it's
Okay.
gonna be like light-hearted and fun. So right now we wanna get started. We already know like the basics. We're now ready basically, by the way, like
Mm.
to just start with Angular.
Right.
So setting up local environment in workspace, I clicked on that, and
Mm-hmm.
we already know these things. we need the node package manager. We have it.
Mm-hmm.
We said we saw this in the terminal window, and we have it.
Right.
And now to install the Angular CLI, we're gonna type
Mm-hmm.
npmi minus g is for global. We want Angular to be installed on our machine, like the whole machine, not just.
Okay.
And we're just gonna say at Angular slash CLI.
Mm-hmm.
CLI is the command line interface. It stands for CLI. So what it does is this gives us like this installs Angular, and it
Mm-hmm.
also gives us way to use ng commands. Here it's starting with npm, right? So now
Yes.
this will install Angular, and we
Okay.
will be able to use ng create new, ng create component. The command line interface to use Angular. That's
Right.
what
Okay.
we get by doing this.
Okay.
Once we do this,
Mm-hmm.
it'll install Angular, but I have Angular installed already. It's just checking for a few things and it's gonna install. Yeah. Do you have it installed?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Great. You're already ahead of us. So it didn't install actually, but it's just saying that it added 5 packages. Okay. So Angular is installed already.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing we need to do is create a new app. So what we're going to do is ng new app, new my
Mm-hmm.
app. This will be the app name.
All
We
right.
can say we can say books dashboard,
Yes. Okay.
and if we click new, we get
Mm-hmm.
a boilerplate code. So I
Okay.
did that already, and to just save time, I did that already, and I have it
Mm-hmm.
here. Uh, it generates like all these files. Once you say ng new,
Mm-hmm.
it generates all these files, and we're gonna go
Okay.
through at least like at a very high level what
Mm-hmm.
these things mean, and at least like know the environment before um,
We start to code.
start to code. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So Angular comes with Git installed, like it sets up the Git repository. That's why you see the README, and this is all like boilerplate stuff. Um, so we see node modules, right? We can start
Mm-hmm.
with this.
Okay.
Of course, Angular is like we used npm to install Angular, and Angular
Mm-hmm.
has like a set of node packages
Mm-hmm.
that by just doing ng new books dashboard, we got. So it installed the Angular dev kit, it installed some libraries, it installed CLI, in order to just see what all are the modules that were installed. I
Mm-hmm.
can look at the package.json.
Right.
Package.json is just like a spec file. JSON is JavaScript object notation. It's just like a syntax. It's a document format, just like .html, .xml. This
Okay.
this is how Node works, like Node Package Manager works.
Mm-hmm.
It basically looks at all the package.json files, and it
Mm-hmm.
installs these libraries. You see under dependencies, all these
Right.
libraries were installed. By the way, we just are trying to get familiar with stuff. We're not gonna like be making changes directly to this file. The CLI and everything is gonna be handling this for us.
Okay.
So package JSON is like already has installed Angular animations, compiler, some common packages. You see everything starting with Angular.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
These are all Angular packages.
Right.
And we said Angular is a platform, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we know that this is. By the way, one step I think I skipped because we didn't install the app while we were here. So once you say ng new my app, it
Mm-hmm.
asks by default, do you want Angular routing? You can say
Mm-hmm.
yes, and you can
Okay.
also select the style sheet format that you want to use. There's like
Okay.
CSS, SCSS. You can choose which one,
Okay.
and it just installs. But we don't
Okay.
want to do this. So I just skipped that part thinking it's not needed. Are you able to go along with us, Rich? Do you have a boilerplate code ready already, or where do
Yes,
you
I'm just looking at it. Yeah.
so you have the app generated and
Yes.
you
Mm-hmm.
did cd and you moved into the app name as well, right? App folder.
Yes.
So this is important. Any other commands we type from here on, it's going to be from this folder.
Okay.
Okay. So package JSON. Can you just tell me what package JSON is?
Um, a list of all the dependent packages that we need to have installed.
That Angular already installed for us. Yeah.
Right.
And
Okay.
if you want to add a new package and everything, we're not going to be making changes here unless we want to.
Mm-hmm.
The CLI will take care of updating this file.
I
This is
see.
just
Okay.
a place for us to know like what are the things we have.
Mm-hmm.
You see RxJS is already there and TypeScript is already there.
Mm-hmm.
Our two friends, which we just saw that, Angular is made with these things. So Angular automatically installed it for you because
Mm-hmm.
all of the code that these, the other components of Angular, other modules of Angular are built upon are using these.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's like baked into it. You cannot avoid TypeScript and RxJS if you're moving to Angular. That's one of the reasons why, because it's like two extra things. One
Mm-hmm.
of the reasons why Angular is a little daunting when it comes to learning in comparison with React and other front end libraries or frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
We do know the difference between frameworks and libraries now, right?
Right.
What is it?
So with a library, it's more of just calling a library to do some, I don't know, some sort of work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe a library to bring the latest news for you or something like that. Whereas with framework, it's more about how your code itself is organized and how, and also a framework can include libraries within there.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
really a wonderful summary. Yeah. Also, libraries are like, React is a library because you can write basically just JavaScript and you can
Mm-hmm.
import React in front of it.
Right.
If I have to, I'll just say like import React. It doesn't come with like ng new add. And here we see like Angular while installing it asked us for a bunch of things. Do you want
Mm-hmm.
Angular routing? It's like an
Right.
entire platform. It gave you like this entire setup. It's a
Mm-hmm.
framework because it's complete. It
Right.
doesn't your code is written in that syntax, in the syntax of Angular, like how Angular wants you to write it. So it's basically like you're writing code inside Angular. Whereas with React or with any libraries, you just do your code in any code you have. You just say
Mm-hmm.
import and you add a library. But your summarization was right as well.
Okay.
So we saw how to add like what package JSON is, and that's
Mm-hmm.
most of the config we need. Angular JSON is like just some configuration for your app.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to get into it right away, but if it's nice for us to know schematics. Just like how the way your app is written, you want some rules to be followed.
Mm-hmm.
And the app prefix is just like, if you have a component here,
Mm-hmm.
all the components go inside the app folder. So
Right.
app here, if you look at the just app component.cs, you're calling it app root, the selector. This is the
Mm-hmm.
app prefix. So if you change the prefix here, it reflects there. So the config file is basically just like some configurations for your Angular project.
Mm-hmm.
So if you make this books dashboard or BD, then your app select all your apps components are gonna be BD dash search BD. We're gonna see these things. For now, it's not required. I'm just trying to give you a flavor of what we have.
Right.
So a lot of configurations for production and development, and all of the performance tunings, by the way, that you mentioned. If
Mm-hmm.
required, you'll be doing them here.
I see.
Optimization, and it's very declarative, like
Mm-hmm.
because it takes care of everything by itself. You just declarative is just like, you tell it what to do and it does it for you. Whereas imperative is like you do the things, you say do this explicitly, do that explicitly, and then you get that done. you know
Right.
so Angular is declarative, like the config part here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to performance, you're just going to say budgeting, type this much, that much. So it's a framework. It gives you more than what you need. So
Right.
this is for testing, unit testing, just to test like if your code is right or not. Like, but we're not going to be going through these. So TS config, TS is TypeScript, as you would have figured already. So this is some configurations for that.
Okay.
Like how it should be written. Should there be consistency in the names? Should it have a source map? This is like a development tool which we'll see, inshallah.
Mm-hmm.
And the target, like which version of JavaScript are we gonna like compile down to, which module, like for all these versionings of the JavaScript that
Okay.
TypeScript needs to compile down to. Because we said TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, right? How are you feeling, by the way, on the scale of five, one being the lowest, five being the highest? Are you like confused with all these files? But know that this is just config. We're not going to be touching these things.
Yeah, so it's okay. I'm just very interested in knowing what actually happens and how
Yeah.
the magic part.
Yeah, because like we're not going to be writing code inside this Angular, right? Like, so we're just
Right.
basically looking around Angular. We just said ng new project, and
Yes.
it created a lot of things for us. So we're going to see, okay, what's this? What's that? That's we're still expert. We're just in a place where we're in a place where there's like a lot of things. We're just looking around, basically. We don't have to know it from inside out. Like we'll
Mm-hmm.
just acknowledge that it's there. That's it. That's
Okay.
where we're at.
Okay.
So TypeScript config is just that, like some rules, strict templates, like this is what it happens.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, let me just talk a little bit about how Angular compiles down to what you see on the browser. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if we go back to our example of how the web works, we do know that the browser can only read HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But
Right.
Angular is made of TypeScript. You see here, like it's a .ts file. It's a TS file. So what happens with these frameworks is that they come with a bundler,
Mm-hmm.
which when you run the code, it compiles all your Java TypeScript code. It
Mm-hmm.
compiles down to JavaScript. It
JavaScript. Okay.
prepares something like bundles. It minimizes your files. It kind of creates this digestible format of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which the browser can read. It's no
All right.
longer, all this syntax. It's no longer all this syntax that the browser reads. The browser is not going to read what app component is, what a selector is, what a template is. It's not going to read these things. The browser can't even understand this. This is Angular syntax.
Right.
So,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
so when you run the app, it gets
Mm-hmm.
loaded into just these three things. I just want to quickly highlight that.
Okay.
So we saw a lot of test files. We saw now like we're into the source app folder.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the entire app is going to be. All our
Okay.
components, all our services, everything's going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Assets is like a place where we can have, you know, any data, or I don't know, it can be any images that we want to have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and environments is just like which environment you're in. It's just like a declarative syntax.
Mm-hmm.
It's used for mainly replacing your files, like with JavaScript, TypeScript. You're just telling if production is false, it won't do
Okay.
any of these compile downs. It'll
Right.
compile it, in a different way. Whereas if it's for production, it's gonna be set to true and it'll compile it in a different way. It'll try to minimize your code, shrunk it, optimize it, because it's a framework. It does these things for you out of the box.
Okay.
You're just going to be writing code, like, so it's awesome, right? It makes
Mm-hmm.
your app performant without you even telling it. Like it's
Right.
already like capable of that. So we know like most of things. I think we're around uh style.css is like any global style that you want your entire dashboard to hold. It can be
Yes.
here.
Okay.
Main.ts is like, again, this is the file that first renders, the bundler that we talked about. Once your
Mm-hmm.
app compiles down to normal code that the browser can read, the first place it comes to is here. If it's production, it enables the prod mode, and there's a like bunch of imports. Main.ts, this is the first file that it sees.
Mm-hmm.
uh, App
Okay.
module is like the first module, the only module that it knows, and it reads this. It imports
Okay.
this already.
Oh, okay.
And this is the main HTML that loads. These two things. The bundler is
Index
gonna
and main.
put all of our code inside these. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So inside this HTML, do you see app root?
Yes.
This is where our application is gonna be.
Okay.
This is our
Mm-hmm.
entire books dashboard. Right now, we see the entire app that we want to load and see. By the way, we can see what this boilerplate code is. Like the Hello World app of Angular we just created. Like
Mm-hmm.
we just did ng new and we did, right.
Yeah.
We're gonna see how this looks. Let's see how it looks. Let's run this code and get into more details of the app components
Yes.
itself, because it's
Okay.
nice to see and do, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you excited to see how your Angular app looks like?
Absolutely. I have no
I mean,
idea
it's
what it looks like.
yeah, because we just did ng new and it generated a bunch of things. We at least
Yes.
know what the bunch of things are. We know that
Yeah.
it's going to come to main ts import app module, and we
Mm-hmm.
know that it's going to read the index.html. Every server, by the way, once you send like the entire website or web app files to it, the first
Mm-hmm.
thing that the browser is capable of reading on its own is the
Mm-hmm.
index.html.
Right.
So this HTML has our entire app imported with the Angular selected. We're
Right.
gonna see
Okay.
what it looks like. We know
Okay.
we don't enough like care about what the app itself is made of, because we'll now
Mm-hmm.
see what the code is and then come back. So what do you think we should type to load the app? I don't want to give you the command, but let's read. I want us to like see and come back. I want us to refer to the doc and keep doing, because I don't want to do anything from my memory.
So,
So we
okay.
did
So, just
CD.
one thing. So, we did not really add anything to the boilerplate code as of now.
Yeah.
So, um, from just by looking at the index.html, so there's going to be an icon on screen of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Oh, this
all?
is the fab icon. No.
All right.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Thank you so much. So app root is gonna
Mm-hmm.
load up this component, app root component.
All right.
That's the
Mm-hmm.
selector, right? We have here, if you
Yes.
see. So the entire app component is what we're going to see now. Do you
All
want to
right.
see the
Okay.
code first before you see what it looks like?
Yes. Sure.
Okay. So the app root this is the app root component. It has
Right.
some JavaScript. It has some what is this property, right? It has
Mm-hmm.
a title and it's
Yes.
called books dashboard. This was
Okay.
what Angular generated for us, and
Right.
it has a HTML and a CSS, right?
Right. Yes.
This is
Mm-hmm.
our view. This is our
Mm-hmm.
CSS. This is our HTML file. Let's look
Yep.
at HTML. What HTML it has? It has a lot of things for you to get excited. They've
Mm-hmm.
added a lot of things. This file, of course, we're gonna replace it. It comes with a
Yes.
lot of CSS on top. All these CSS and JavaScript. All this Angular generated for you. It has some icons. It has probably some animations. They make it really exciting for you to look at your first Angular app, like
Right.
which they generated. So they
Yeah.
it one thing to note here is on line 344 we say title app is running.
Okay. So it's gonna be
Yeah, you
okay.
see here
Yes.
it's gonna say what?
Books dashboard.
Rachel's books dashboard. Let's say Rachel's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you want to do that, Rachel's books dashboard. Just
Okay.
like string escaping. We want to have Rachel's string. Okay. So Yeah, this is what our app is going to look like. It's going to have a rocket apparently. It's going to have a lot of things. This is a lot of HTML for us to read, but they make it really exciting with a lot of SVGs. You can see SVG cloud. This was just a sneak
Yes.
peek, by the way. So we know that index.html is going to be selecting this,
Mm-hmm.
and this has this HTML, and
Yep.
this is the page that we're going to be loading, right?
Yes.
This
Okay.
is what
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be loading. Now, if we go back to the app, sorry, the
Mm-hmm.
documentation of Angular,
Mm-hmm.
can you tell me how to load the app by reading the documentation?
So ng serve uh and open hyphen hyphen
Yeah,
open. Yeah,
yeah. We don't need to do the CD because
we're already there.
in the books dashboard. Yeah, you can also do PWD, present working directory, and check where you are. So we're already in the books dashboard. So now if I do ng serve dash dash open, it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna open. It's gonna, what it does, Angular is now like generating all the application bundles that's compiling
Yes.
your Angular code into
Mm-hmm.
JavaScript, HTML, CSS. It's
Okay.
taking up all the modules, it's going through the router, all the Angular modules, and it also took care of opening the browser. I didn't move, my hands are here.
Right.
It just moved on its own. It opened a new tab, and yay, this is what we see. This is what the app that was generated by Angular.
Yep. Okay. This
Does
is
look
cool.
fun.
Yes, it
Yeah,
does.
and do you notice your name here?
Yeah, on top.
Yeah, that was the property we just said. That's the only modification we did so far. But yeah, we already customized it. So this is Rachel's books dashboard, right?
And it makes sense. I when you were just sort of scrolling through the files, I just noticed rocket ship smoke. I was like, what is this rocket ship smoke? So
Yeah,
that makes sense
HP.
as well.
Yeah, the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yes.
This is the icon, I think, the SVG code of that
Yep.
icon.
Mhm.
We have a lot of things here, but we don't need this. Of course, our app is not going to look like this.
Yes.
We have a lot of HTML and CSS. We're going to be doing our own app, but this is like, the boilerplate code to get started. So we know how to like set up. The setup part is now
Yes.
officially done.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd really encourage you to ask more questions here. There was one file that we didn't read from here. Two files actually. So I want you to tell me what they are, and I want you to like guess basically. Tell me and guess an answer.
Guess which we did not really look at.
Yeah, these from inside the app folder. We have these files.
Probably the app routing module.
Yeah. And what do you think this does?
Hmm. I'm not sure. No.
Hmm.
What is
That's
it
fine.
routing?
If you want to have like some pages like, slash
Mm-hmm.
dashboard or slash search, you can do that using routing. But we don't
Okay.
have any routes set up right now. You see
Mm-hmm.
routes, the routes parameters empty array. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have anything set up right now. We just
Right.
generated it, and we will be coming back to this. But this is the place where, it already gave us the code to generate routes. You just have to basically expand this array
Mm-hmm.
with the syntax that, I mean, with the property names, like the JSON names, the object names that they're asking for, and that's it. You'll
Okay.
have routing. See how powerful Angular is. You don't have to do
Right.
much for
When
enabling
you mean
routing in Java.
right, sorry.
Yeah.
When you mean routing, do you mean like moving from one page to another, or are you talking about something else?
Moving from one page to another.
Oh, right. Okay. Uh-huh.
That's
Okay.
routing. We're going to go
Right.
through that
Okay.
concept more in detail, like, like how to do it, how to configure it, what's server side, net client side. We're going to know more about it, but that's upcoming, that's coming up. Let's just take it like one thing at a time. And there's one more file
Mm-hmm.
that we didn't still see,
Okay. And
which is right underneath app component.
right. Okay. Uh, was it the spec file?
This is for
Did
testing.
you
We're gonna
read
just
it?
ignore this file. We don't want to go into
Okay.
testing yet. First, we're just gonna explore.
Okay.
There's, I think, three files. Yeah, this app module. What do you think app module does?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't look at
A
this
list
file
of all the
really.
modules that we. Okay. Yeah, a
Yeah,
list of all the modules that
exactly.
were. Yep.
True,
Okay.
true. And do you remember in the main TX, main.ts,
Mm-hmm.
the file, we have app module.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this is the place where all the other packages of Angular are going to be imported. But main TS is the file that the bundler is going to know. And it comes here
Okay.
and then it knows that there's app module, and app module is the Angular kind of way of extending modules and
All
components
right.
and services and I don't know what not. All of things we'll need to add here in order for
Mm-hmm.
our app to know that this is what we have, because this is
Right.
the first place where it comes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one fun fact, actually a question. Let me ask you a question. How does
Okay.
the bundler know that this is the component or this is the file that it has to start at? You can look at the code and tell me.
Um, I'm not sure. You said it's going to start with app root, which would be like the car. So I'm just guessing
Yeah,
maybe it goes from the app component.
yeah. Also, like
Hmm.
here in the app module, we are mentioning it.
Right.
Bootstrap is the place where just like any operating system has a bootstrap. Bootstrap is nothing but the loading point. It's not
Yes.
the UI library we know. Bootstrap is like the first thing that gets invoked as soon as you turn on operating system. The same
Right.
terminology is borrowed here. The
Mm-hmm.
first component that gets loaded
Loaded.
once
All
an
right.
Angular app hits the browser is the app component. Yep.
Right. Okay.
But you're right about this part too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
app root and the selector. Through the selector, they'll just come to the HTML part of it. This is for the view
Right.
only.
I see.
They'll
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they'll come here to the HTML. But for them to get the, this
The
particular
idea.
TS file, the
Yes.
title, yeah, this thing, for them to
Mm-hmm.
get this, they have to come to app component
App
from
mod.
here,
All
and
right.
they
From app
come to
module.
app module from the main.ts. I know it's a bit of a, it's nice to know. We don't have to like memorize these or whatever. It's not like that. It's
But
just to for us to know what are these.
but that
These
actually
two
sort of
things.
makes
Yeah.
sense, right? Because you said that the bundler, the language that it understands is basically the TypeScript. So it's first going to look at the TS files to identify what are the HTML files or things that it needs to load up by looking at the TS files.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it compiles down all these files to normal JavaScript, HTML, CSS that we know.
Right.
So this is like us being familiar with what are all the stuff we have. And
Yes.
this
Mm-hmm.
this fav icon that you see, it's just like the icon that gets loaded up on our books dashboard. Do you see here
Yep.
the black icon
Right.
here?
Yes.
This is the
Mm-hmm.
fav icon. Yep. And our next step is hidden here in this page. We don't have to like look at the documentation, but we can look
Right.
at the documentation too. So what's next on our agenda? We already understood, I mean, got introduced to a lot of web concepts. We saw how the web works. We saw difference between frameworks, libraries, web apps, websites. We got
Mm-hmm.
into Angular architecture. We also started by loading Angular app, like
Mm-hmm.
we generated, we got started with all that. What's the next thing on our agenda? Do you remember?
I want to say we want to create a new component.
Yay, yes. And do you see how to do that from this page?
Yes. Very clear.
Where's right? Okay,
Yes.
great. I'm not gonna quiz you more and annoy you. So yeah, we're gonna say ng generate component, but we can
Mm-hmm.
also get this from here. I don't want
From the
to like,
docs itself. Yeah.
yeah, this is our friend. Anywhere we like,
Stuck.
this is our guide. Yeah, yeah. So oh, by the way, when once we did serve, we saw this, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So the next steps for us to is to understand the concepts as
Mm-hmm.
per the documentation, but we're going to take a more hands-on approach. We're going to go through the documentation together
Mm-hmm.
while building components, while building services, while building our books dashboard. So
Mm-hmm.
by the end of this series of this episode series, you'll be like well versed with all the Angular concepts that you'd need to know, and you can build more. Like learning never stops, right? So
Absolutely.
our target is to like get you used to most of the frequent concepts with Angular,
Mm-hmm.
and we can go more deep, like as and when things come up.
Right.
So, are you ready for building your first component?
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Uh, do you want to take a 5 minute break
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
just to refresh and get back?
Yes. Maybe I can have a look at the documentation meanwhile.
No, you go rest. Like
Oh,
you'll
okay.
you'll you'll take a break, like break
All
from
right.
just like 5 minutes, and then we'll be back.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
coffee. Yeah, we can do coffee. You can grab something. Yes.
Okay.
Should we set up a timer?
Yes, we should. Yes.
All right.
Okay. Hi, welcome back.
Hey, yeah. So I think that 5 minutes were much needed
Yes,
to kind of maintain our sanity. But
and
yeah,
get the
we,
coffee back in the system.
yeah, exactly. Wow. So I think we're like 30 minutes away from the time that we had planned. We did have
Yep.
a quite deep discussion about like the fundamental concepts, and we also got started. I think we should
Yes.
just stop with creating the new component, like how you can build your own first component,
Right.
and we can keep the services for the coming up, like the next episode. So we'll
Sure.
go through, we can start the next episode with the books API, like going through the books API and how you can create a service and getting started with those things
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Okay.
All right. So, yeah, we're going to now, like, after seeing how the boilerplate code looks, we're now going to talk briefly about the component itself and then
Mm-hmm.
get into details of how we can build our own component using the ng CLI. CLI is the command line interface we just saw. So,
Yep.
what's a component? What do you think
Um,
is a component?
Now, anything can be a component. So, let's say, so for the one that we wanted to build, maybe the search bar is a component.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
So component is ideally like a piece of UI that your app
Yes.
holds in terms of like front end and front end frameworks. Of course, there are
Mm-hmm.
other places where the same terminology is being used, but here
Yep.
component is a piece of UI that represents in your code, like basically. So a component, like we already saw, Rachel's book dashboard, the title property. A component
Mm-hmm.
can have property, right?
Yes.
A component can have properties just like any other class. It can
Mm-hmm.
have its own properties and methods,
Right.
variables and methods, or whatever terminology you use. So these methods can be like the place where the logic is happening. Once you click like a search bar,
Mm-hmm.
um, do search, the actual do search logic can be the method, or
Right.
it can be these things. So but what we want to briefly discuss is how these components are made, and
Mm-hmm.
this logic, the metadata, how Angular describes a component. If we
Mm-hmm.
kind of understand this, then we're good to go and we can start building our own first component.
Okay.
So as you can see here, it starts with add component, which is a
Mm-hmm.
decorator for
Okay.
Angular to know that it's a component.
I
And the
see. Okay.
Angular, it starts with a curly bracket, and inside the
Mm-hmm.
curly bracket you have some metadata.
Right.
The selector, this is
Mm-hmm.
like the HTML part.
Mm-hmm.
It goes as a HTML element in your code. The
Mm-hmm.
template URL, this is actually a file to a HTML, external HTML. Or you can write some real HTML code here. I'll just
I
show you
see.
that
Okay. Mm-hmm.
instead of a file, it can be HTML code by itself. Instead of
Okay.
URL, you'll just say template in that case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Providers are like services, which we are going to see in the next episode. We'll be
All right.
building a book service, but right
Mm-hmm.
now we don't have any. And you can also have a style, which we'll see in our code, to
Mm-hmm.
link your CSS file.
Okay.
And you can see that we're exporting this component, and we it has a normal class syntax, and it's extending some methods, a very basic way of object oriented, how you deal with classes there. It's just that. But if you look at the picture here, it's more insightful in terms of how the component itself works, and
Mm-hmm.
how the properties and the methods that you defined are being into action, like are
Okay.
playing into action. We had title to be books dashboard, right? Rachel's
Mm-hmm.
books dashboard. That's what we set
Yes.
it here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm, This is property binding because whatever you set in your component is what you're seeing here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can also have event binding. Here, if you have like a, what do you call, a button here, which, or anything clickable, anything interactive, once you
Yes.
click on that, you can also bind it with an event to the
Mm-hmm.
component.
Right. Okay.
And this is all in your template file, and the metadata is what we saw here. But I think this is what most of what we needed to know.
Okay.
But there's more about just the concept of data binding, basically.
Mm-hmm.
When we go back to our MVC model, now we are just dealing with m like template being the Angular terminology to describe views, right? So how
Right.
does it compile down to a view?
Mm-hmm.
In the Angular way, the model being the property, the title, Rachel's dashboard, the property, and the template itself, they merge one time to
Mm-hmm.
generate the view. Whatever the
Okay.
property holds, the data and the template merge one time to render the view. That's one way.
Okay.
Whereas the two way is like, you have the view updating the property as well in terms of a search term, or a search text, the
Mm-hmm.
variable that we'll create now in some time. The property that we'll create, we'll see how it's two-way driven, two-way
Right.
binded. The view can also update the what's inside your component. So that's
Okay.
two-way.
Mm-hmm.
It updates the model being referred to here as property, the property title, or the search term that we just said. So
Okay.
here, in terms of Angular, the template compiles to a view, like
Mm-hmm.
it becomes HTML, and you have like this entire cycle of the view being updating the model, and the
And then the
model
model.
updating the view.
All right. Okay.
So this is two-way data binding.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't start building components yet, but we'll be now, like in less than few minutes. So just like how another concept we need to know with object oriented programming is inheritance, right? There's like a
Mm-hmm.
hierarchy, but components can also have hierarchy. Like,
Okay.
you have a root component, and there can be parents, there can be children, grandchildren. So here,
Mm-hmm.
what's our root component? What do you
Mm-hmm.
think is our? You can guess what's the root component from the code we saw.
I think it was the app root.
Yeah, app root
Yeah.
is a root, and
Mm-hmm.
inside that we're gonna have like multiple other childs. This is a hierarchy we set. So
Right. Okay.
app root can have, I don't know, the new component we're gonna create. That'll be the
Mm-hmm.
child, and this component can have another component, and this is how like you can build your entire app. Again, to just recap, component is a piece of UI, and this is how you describe it in Angular, and this is how it works briefly. And we saw what data binding is: one way, two way. We'll be doing an example of a two way. We already saw the example of one way
Yeah.
with
So
this.
just to clarify with the next image, yeah, this one. So for example, my component could be a form that could contain maybe a text area, a button. So those would be sub components within my main component.
If you want to describe a button to be a component, yeah, it's up to
Yeah.
you. But
Okay.
component is like something reasonably sized, which holds a
Okay.
lot of huge, some code, which makes it functional on its own. It's like a piece of
Right.
UI.
Okay.
Just a button maybe by itself is, if you
Too small.
define it,
Okay.
yeah, it's the size you decide as a developer. It can
All
be
right.
too small, but it gets very hard to maintain. So a button, ideally, we'll be using. That's a very interesting question, and kind of a pave way for our next step.
Mm-hmm.
So a button can also be a component that
Okay.
a library is providing, right? It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be a component from your code. It can be a component from your library.
Okay.
So let's get started with some component. Like, let's build a component. We have like 15 20 minutes for that. So do you see like this running on your machine already? Like, we did ng serve, and we the last we did was ng serve open, and this is
Yes.
running. So I
Mm-hmm.
want to keep this running. So I
Okay.
can either click here, which is like split terminal. So I have this running, because
Mm-hmm.
when I make changes, the compiler will compile, and if there are any errors, it'll let me know here.
All
So I
right.
want
Okay.
this running. I want to see it, and I don't want to keep killing it, bringing it back. So I'm just gonna split my terminal from the.
Mhm.
I can just I just show you, or I can also like right click and split terminal or create a new terminal. I prefer splitting. It's up to you. So we're here already, right?
Mhm.
And we saw how to create a new component. Should
Yeah,
we also look it up on the documentation how to do that? Let's
sure.
make it a rule to not do anything from memory, because I should be explaining it to you like what I'm doing. So in order for us to learn about components, I mean like to start with components, we'll now move into the section of understanding Angular
Mhm.
in the same docs, and we'll be
Okay.
clicking on components.
Mhm.
So most of the things we saw already, like this is
Mhm.
exactly what we went through in the slides. We already have the CLI installed, we have the project as well.
Mhm.
So this is the section which is relevant for us now. Again, we are going through the documentation, so you can do this on your own, like you can follow along. Documentation should never be separate from the actual framework that you're using. They go hand in hand. If you want to understand the framework, you need to understand the documentation. Just like how we went through the hierarchy of the code, if there were others, they'd be saying like go through this as well. But I didn't, we're just gonna take the dictionary approach. We're just gonna,
Right.
take things for the documentation part. So we're here in the components overview. So creating a component. The
Mhm.
easiest way to create a component with Angular CLI is by just saying ng generate component, and you can
Okay.
type the component name.
Okay.
That was too long, right? Just like how we did npm I for install. It
Mhm.
can also be like nggc.
I see. Okay.
G for generate, C for component. Or if
Mhm.
you prefer to type the whole thing, you can do that too. So what do you
All right.
think our first component should be?
Um, the search bar.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
so too. Because everything with the dashboard starts with the search bar. Like we want to search for books. That's one of the
Something.
features.
Yes. Mhm.
Our stakeholder, that's you, i.e.,
Mhm.
that's i.e. you came up with. So we're gonna,
Right.
yeah. So we did ng generate component. We're gonna call
Mhm.
it search bar or just
Mhm.
search. I think search books
Okay.
maybe.
Mhm.
I think search
Yeah,
is
I
good
think so.
enough. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
I'm a bit fussy when it comes to naming. Yep. So what did it do? It went
Okay.
ahead
Mhm.
and created .css. It went ahead and created a
Mhm.
HTML file, and it
Mhm.
created spec we're not interested in, and it created a component.ts, and it updated the app.module.
Right. Okay.
Right? That was
Mhm.
quite a lot of work. It did it for us, and it saved us a lot of time. So we should be really grateful for Angular now. But anyways, so let's see what are all the changes that it did. Since it had Git installed already, like Angular
Mhm.
installed Git, it shows us these and all these things. It's version control, right? Any new
Yeah.
changes that you make are getting gonna be automatically highlighted. Just FYI. So now if you look at the app module, you'll see the
Mhm.
search component imported
Yeah.
already
Okay.
inside declarations. Declarations is the place
Right.
where you'll add set of components, directives, pipes. What I just did was I hovered over here and it showed me the
Mhm.
documentation. This is
Right.
also an amazing feature of Angular. It being a framework, it comes with documentation inbuilt as well.
Right. Mhm.
So, declarations, I added my
Mhm.
component here, and that's the only change we did here. So,
Right.
if we just close all and look at our search component inside the app folder, now
Mhm.
we also have a search folder. You see
Yeah.
all these highlights, these are from Git, like I told you
Right.
already. So, this search bar, this search folder now has all the four files that we just saw.
Yes.
This
Okay. Mhm.
CSS, HTML, TS. Let's start with TS. The metadata that we saw there,
Mhm.
it's here.
Right.
Instead of template URL, I mean, we have the template in the HTML file.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of providers, we are having style URLs. We can also have providers, but we didn't get into the services yet, so we're going to skip that for now. Style URLs is like a URL to
Mm-hmm.
the external CSS file. Of course, it's empty because we didn't write anything. Doesn't generate styles for us. But for the HTML, in order for you to see something, this will appear. Search works. It's just some default text. So that's our very first search component, right?
Right. Okay.
But how do we make sure it appears on the app? If you see the app, we don't have anything here. By the way,
Right.
because the app is already running, there's hot
Mm-hmm.
reloading. Any changes I make, the app compiles by itself and it reloads the page. If you want
Okay.
to test that right now, I can do that. I can show it to you. Let's test
Mm-hmm.
it with the app component. Let's call it Rachel's, I don't know, books dashboard. Let's change the case and I don't know. Let's just add a word project.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And once I say, please keep a note on, where we are here.
Yeah.
You see compiled successfully. Just notice here.
Yes.
Okay. Once I click
Okay.
save, I
Mm-hmm.
still didn't click save. App
Okay.
component. Once I click save, you see what happened is
Right.
it generated the bundle again and
Mm-hmm.
it detected only the changes that we made and it recompiled. What
Right.
all it did was it looked at main.js and
Mm-hmm.
because of the diffing algorithm they have and everything, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's details, but it's really smart way of optimally just rendering. And you see the page got reloaded as well on its own. I didn't click on reload, and you see
Yes.
the thing here already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's
So
good.
in order for us to see the search component, that's our goal, right? We want to see the
Yeah.
search component. Let's first
Mm-hmm.
remove out all the junk from here. Like the app component page is just too big,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's
Yeah.
clear out all of this. It's gonna be a blank page now. Let's just have Rachel's what do you call H2. Let's just have title here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now we're gonna see a very sad page with nothing literally, but that's our actual app. That's where we are. We'll see the sad reality. Again,
Okay.
it reloaded by itself. And this is our app. This
Right.
is our actual code.
Mm-hmm.
And we still don't see this search works. We still
Right.
didn't render our search bar or search
Right.
component yet. We
Mm-hmm.
want
Mm-hmm.
to load it. How do you think we'll do that? We have the
Mm.
selector here. We have the search here.
Yeah.
And we also saw in the example before that this is how it selects. So we know that
Mm-hmm.
selector is the HTML element. It's supposed to be used like this.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just gonna go to the main app page and we're gonna create a tag which with this as the element name.
Okay.
And now what do you think you're gonna expect to see?
I should be able to see the search.
Right,
Yeah.
you're right.
Okay.
So search works. We saw
Mm.
that already. That's great. So we saw the search. Now we have our first component, but of course
Right.
it doesn't. It's just a piece of text. We want to have a search actual search bar.
Yes.
So what we're gonna do is we want to have some UI library to kind of
Mm-hmm.
do the search bar for us. We can also,
Okay.
by the way, just say like input and input
Mm-hmm.
type
Type
equals
is.
text.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go on. Yeah,
Yeah. What
I mean you
else?
were
I
style
think
equals
the number of rows and calls, or that's for
yeah
the text there. Yeah.
2200 pixels.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just setting the width. We can also do this and load a input bar, but we
Mm-hmm.
want it to look nice. Or maybe
Right.
maybe we can add a UI library later. We can just make this functional first. What do you want to do? What do you prefer we do? Do you want to make it look nice or do you want to make it functional? This is the question I have literally every day of my life. Like with as a front end developer, you're like, do you want to focus on
You're stuck
functionality or do you want to
between two.
focus? Exactly. That's so I'm gonna outsource this decision to you. Tell me, what do we do first? Do you wanna make it
Maybe
look
we make it.
nice? Hmm?
Maybe we can make it look nice because in the next episode we can continue with making it more functional.
Okay, sure, we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we can make it functional enough too. Are you curious how you can, use a variable here to kind of just, read, try the two-way data binding first?
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Sure. That'd be interesting.
Like, this is the text we have, right? I mean, this is the component we have.
Mm-hmm.
How can we have something like search text and two-way binded? It's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be of type, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna make it definite. You see the wrong, you see the syntax highlighting. This is
Yeah,
called
this could be
ahead of
right.
time compilation.
Okay.
It already tells you if it's right or not before even being compiled.
Mm-hmm.
That's the power of TypeScript. Like, imagine you being a developer writing production quality code, you're making some mistake, it won't let you make it. Like it
Right.
highlights you. So we have search text already. And
Mm-hmm.
now we're going to use something called input. I'm going to briefly explain what it is, but
Mm-hmm.
see, it automatically added. Input is for you to, like, let the component know that this is going to be used in the view as an input, in the template
Okay.
as an input. So
Okay.
we're going to do what is called two-way data binding. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But for that, let's just initialize this to be something inside ng on init. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to say this dot string text equals, what do we call, d3 getting started. I don't know. This is a string, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, it's search text. The same
So
line. We're just
you want to
initializing
say
this.
and all right. Okay.
We're just initializing this.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to now, like, we didn't show it yet on the template. We didn't hook it up to the input yet. The one way to do
Okay.
two-way data binding here is, remember the model we talked about?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a property called ng model, which
Mm-hmm.
literally all of the elements can take. So
Mm-hmm.
here, if you say search,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what's the name? Search string, search text. Why do I keep
Search
forgetting the name?
text.
Yeah, search
Search
text.
text.
You
Yeah.
have to say search text. Once you say this, you can also read up on this first before you actually do the risk of doing
Mm-hmm.
it. Where is it? Components, two-way data binding. We're gonna see where to find it. Yeah, here inside templates,
Mm-hmm.
property
Yeah. Two-way
binding.
bind. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, two-way binding. That's right, Rachel. So we're gonna use something called as banana in a box kind of syntax.
Okay.
Adding two-way data binding. What is it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We already saw what these are, like element change, property change. The property change, we already saw an example. Title, Rachel's dashboard project, remember? Event binding, we didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
We can get into it later. But two-way data
Okay.
binding is something that combines these two. And
Mm-hmm.
adding two-way data binding, we have 5 minutes. Adding two-way data binding is like a combination of these things. Like you're going to use this kind of a syntax and you're
Mm-hmm.
going to pass in like the property. In our
Right.
case, it's uh, there's no property name for input. So we're going to use something called ng model because input takes ng model. So that's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we have search text already. We're just gonna
Mm-hmm.
reload. This is our books dashboard. Banana in a box.
I'm never gonna forget that now.
Yeah. Sorry, it's banana in a box. That's wrong. This is banana and this is the box, right?
But
You know,
isn't
when
this the
you're live
box in the
coding,
banana?
yeah, when you're live coding, you tend to forget everything. That's what's happening with me. So bear with me, please. So that's the banana in a box. We just binded it and we also have it set. Why is it not showing up? Because we didn't set the value property.
Ah, okay.
The value property of this should be this. This is one way for us to do two-way data binding. Sorry, this is a way for us to do two-way data binding, and value is value. Okay, do you see search text? But this is not
Yes.
how it's supposed to appear. It should
It
be,
should be saying D3 getting started. The value of that.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Yay! This
Okay.
this thing that I did is like called template interpolation. We'll know more about it, but this is how it
Okay.
is. So we actually made it functional first. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Rich. I'm a horrible friend. I didn't listen to you. But I think on the flip side, we learned what data binding is, like the concept we
Yes.
just covered. And it's
Hmm.
two-way data binding because
Because we were able to get back the value of the component.
yeah, yeah, we
Yeah, we
can
were
we
able.
can see we can actually get value back of it. Like there's a way for us to check. Um, get search text maybe. I don't know. I'm very bad with names. I mean, I tried to get better at, yeah. So here, let's just console log
Hmm.
uh, this dot search text to actually see that it's being updated, right?
Right.
Just to prove that we have done two-way data mining, because right now you don't see it. How do you know that this is getting updated in the component? We don't. So for us to
True.
know that, we should just set up an event, and this is where you see that we're combining event and property binding, which is two-way data binding. Key up, what is the method we need to call? Get search
Get
text, right?
search text. Hmm.
Yeah, with the parenthesis for it to know that it's a method.
Hmm.
And it loaded, and we're going to clear our console. Getting started. Wow.
Wow, indeed.
No, it's supposed to update. It does not.
Hmm.
Okay, maybe we can do enter. The key up is good. Why is it not getting me the updated text? So the search text is getting updated, but it's supposed to print, the updated text here. It's supposed to say the dot 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 here. Why is it
Ah,
not
okay.
doing that? I think we should initialize this here. No, I don't think so. But see, when this is gonna happen a lot to me because we're live coding and I tend to not use my brain when we are here. All right. I'm going to see why this is not working and get back to you with working code. But this
Sure.
is the idea. Like,
Yeah,
the
okay.
console is supposed to print the update. And in the next episode, we're going to see how to use. We'll first start by making this look pretty, and we're going
Hmm.
to see how to create services, like communicating with the backend service. That's what we'll see. And
Right.
in the meanwhile, like if you want to get a jump start, I already did a talk on it, and most of slides we'll be referring from there. I can like if you go to Meena Digital Days, you can see the episode there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I'm not sure where to. If you can, if you can just Google it, I think you should be able to see communicating with backend services. Doha, GDG Doha. We had an event lately, speaker session, all about communicating. This one, yes. This is what we'll be actually doing. There's a talk link here already. So you just have to go to GDG Doha from the community page and you can watch this talk. This is the YouTube link in case you guys are interested. So in the next talk, we're just gonna see how to communicate with the backend service, and we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna also start with state management. Or we'll first like sketch the entire app and
Mm-hmm.
get all the requirements from Rachel, and then build service. We can see how it goes. We can take it with, like, we can go with the flow basically. But thank you so much for your time, Rachel. It was really wonderful
Thank you.
learning
Thank
Angular
you,
with
Wafa, for actually sitting down and teaching me this because it's been long overdue for me.
you. Yeah, it's
Oh.
fun, I guess. It was nice, like, revisiting most of the concepts. And
Mm-hmm.
it all starts here basically. If I have to say one thing, just make this your friend, and
Mm-hmm.
not try to go through everything at once. Just
Yeah.
try to get acquainted with it, and
Mm-hmm.
you can start building more stuff. We're going to see more
Right.
examples and more code things in the
So,
next session, inshallah.
yeah.
All right, it was fun. We're
Yes.
gonna post maybe about the next episode soon, right? Like,
Yes.
we'll let everyone know when to.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll see you in the next episode very soon. So that's a wrap from all of us here. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. See you. Bye bye.